Students, today we are going to read another story from your syllabus, that is The Lost Child. It is written by Mulk Anand, who was born in 1905 and died in the year 2004. Mulk Anand was an Indian writer in English and very much famous for writing a protest novel named Untouchable. Also, his work Coolie is almost everybody's favorite. The notable thing about this man is he was a recipient of the civilian honor of the Padma Bhushan. So let us start reading the story. The Lost Child by Mulk Anand. The story is about a boy who goes into a fair with his parents, gets lost there, and finally, all he wanted was to go back to his parents. The story depicts the love of a small boy, the bond of love between parents and child. So let us get into the depth of the story. It was the festival of spring, and from the wintry shades of narrow lanes and alleys emerged a galley clad humanity. There were many people who were coming out in the lanes, and they all were going towards a fair. Some were walking, some rode on horses, the others sat being carried in bamboo and bullock carts. There was a little boy, and he was going into the fair with his father and mother. He was between his father's leg and brimming over with life and laughter. And every now and then he was getting a call from his parents, "Come, child, come," called his parents whenever he is lagged behind, fascinated by the toys in the shop that lined the way. So he hurried towards his parents like an obedient kid, but his eyes were still lingering on the receding toys. As he came to where they stopped to wait for him, he could not suppress the desire of his heart, even though he very well knew the old cold stare of refusal in their eyes. He wanted to buy many things actually, but he knew that there is a kind of refusal in his parents' eyes, and that's why he did not demand anything. "I want that toy," he pleaded. He requested his parent, but his father looked at him with the red eyes. So you can see his father got angry, and quite silently refused to buy anything in his familiar tyrant way, because we know somewhere the fathers are a little strict towards their child's choices, no. So but mother, she was a little more passionate and melted by the free spirit of the day, because he was just a small boy. He was at a very tender age, and she gave her fingers to hold and said, "Look, child, what is before you." She actually wanted to divert his son's attention toward different things, so that he did not demand. So it was a flowering mustard field, pale like melting gold, as it swept across miles and miles of even land. A group of dragonflies were bustling about on their gaudy purple wings, intercepting the flight of a lone black bee or butterfly in search of sweetness from the flower. As I have told you earlier, that it was the season of spring, and the mustard field was full of flowers, and it was looking very golden, very beautiful, and miles of even land was filled with the mustard plant. But the child followed them in the air with his gaze, till one of them would still its wing and rest, and he would try to catch it, but it would go fluttering. The child was getting fascinated towards the butterflies and the beetles, which were flapping in the air. When he had almost caught it in sand, he tried to catch a butterfly, almost caught it, but then suddenly he heard his mother's voice, "Come, child, come," and he has to move forward. He ran towards his parents' galley and walked abreast of them for a while, being however soon left behind, attracted by little insect and worms along the footpath that were teeming out from their hiding places to enjoy the sunshine. "Come, child, come," his parents called from the shade of a grove where they had seated themselves on the edge of a well. He ran towards them. A shower of young flowers fell upon the child as he entered the grove. Grove means a garden. And forgetting his parents, he began to gather the raining petals in his hand. But lo, he heard the cooing of doves, ran toward his parents, shouting, "Dove, dove, the dove." The raining petals dropped from his forgotten hand. "Come, child, come," they called to the child. Again, the parents gave a cautionary call and called the child, who had now gone running in wild capers round the banyan tree. And gathering him up, they took the narrow winding footpath which led to the fair through the mustard field. So when he was on his way towards the fair, he enjoyed this farm and the view, the dove and the beetles and butterflies, everything, because for a kid everything is fresh and a thing of beauty. So finally they reached to the fair. As they neared the village, the child could see many footpaths full of throngs covering to the whirlpool of the fair, and felt at once repelled and fascinated by the confusion of the world he was entering. So there was one side and that's footpath and the whirlpool of the fair, and the other side was not so lovely. So it was all he was confused about all these things. When he entered into the fair, first he saw a sweet sailor actually, who was selling gulab jamun, rasgulla, barfi, jalebi at the corner of the entrance. A crowd pressed round his counter at the foot of an architecture of many colored sweets, decorated with leaves of silver and gold. The child started staring with wide open eyes. His mouth started watering for the barfi, because barfi was his favorite sweet. "I want that barfi," he slowly murmured. But he knew that if he begged, that his plea would not be heeded, because his parents would say that he was a greedy boy. So without waiting for an answer, he moved on. Next he saw a flower seller who was selling a garland of gulmohar, and was constantly giving a call to the passerbys, "A garland of gulmohar, a garland of gulmohar." The child seemed irresistibly drawn. He was so fascinated, so enchanted. He went toward the basket where the flowers lay heaped, and half murmured, "I want that garland." But again, he knew his parents would refuse to buy him flowers, because they would say that they were cheap and useless at the same time. So he moved on. Next, he saw a man who stood holding a pole with yellow, red, green, purple balloons. You must have seen a balloon sailor, no? Many colors balloon are there with him, attached to a pole. Okay, the child was simply carried away. He was again enchanted by the rainbow glory of the silken color, the beautiful hues of the balloons, and he was filled with an overwhelming desire to purchase them all. He wanted all of them, but he very well knew that his parents would never buy him the balloon, because they would say that he's much older now to play with these kind of toys. So he walked on farther. Next he saw a snake charmer. The snake charmer, he was standing there playing a flute to a snake which coiled itself in a basket, and its head raised in a graceful bend like the neck of a swan, while the music stole into its invisible ears like the gentle ripping of an invisible waterfall. The child went towards the snake charmer, but knowing his parents had forbidden him to hear such coarse music as the snake charmer played, he proceeded farther. For the child, flute's music was so melodious, but he knew that his parents finds it a coarse music, so he proceeded forward. There he saw a roundabout next. In full swing, men, women, children, they all carried away in a whirling motion. They were shrieking and crying. There was a dizzy laughter. The child watched them intently. He was just looking at them, and then he made a bold request. This time he did not hesitate. He wanted to enjoy this ride. He wanted to experience this ride, and finally he made a bold request. "I want to go to the roundabout. Please, father, mother." But When when he spoke this, he saw that there was no reply. He heard no reply. He turned to look at his parents, but they were not there ahead of him. He turned to look on either side, but there was nobody. He looked behind, there was no sign of them. Now the boy realized that he is lost, he has been lost, and tears started rolling down his cheeks. And his face was convulsed with fear, and he was quite panic stricken. He ran to one side first, then to the other side, shouting mother, father, and started wailing and weeping. His yellow turban came untied and his clothes became quite muddy. Having run to and fro in a rage of running for a while, he stood defeated. He was unable to get his parents anywhere. His cries suppressed into sob. Now he started sobbing. But at little distance on the green grass, he could see through his filmy eyes men and women talking. Everybody else was enjoying, and it was just he who was crying and wailing. He tries to look intently among the patches of bright yellow cloth, but there was no sign of his parents anywhere. All the other people, they were laughing and were talking for the sake of laughing and talking. He ran quickly again, this time to a shrine. Shrine means a temple to which people seem to be grounding. Every little inch of space there here was congested with men. There were many people over there. He ran through people's legs, his little sob lingering, mother, father. He was just shouting mother and father. Near the entrance to the temple, however, the crowd became very thick. Man, they were jostling each other, they were just pushing each other. Heavy man with flashing, murderous eyes and hefty shoulders. The poor child, he struggled to thrust away between their feet, but knocked to and fro by their brutal movement. He might have been trampled underfoot, but he was saved by a man. A man in the surging crowd heard his cry and, stooping with the great difficulty, lifted him up in his arm. How did you get here, child? Whose baby are you? The man asked as he steered clear of the mass. A man came there, took him in his arm, and asked him that who he was and how he reached here. The child wept more bitterly than ever now and only cried, I want my mother, I want my father. The man tries to soothe him by taking him to the roundabout. The man now tries to pacify this small boy and offered him a ride. He asked him if will you have a ride on the horse. He gently asked as he approached the ring. The child's throat tore into 1,000 shrill sobs and he only shouted, I want my mother and I want my father. The man headed toward the place where the snake charmer was playing the flute to the swaying cobra. Now once again he was seeing all those things which he earlier wanted, and the man was offering everything to him. And the man said, see child, listen to this nice music. But the child, he shuts his ears with his fingers and shouts with double pitched strain, I want my mother, I want my father. The man took him near the balloons and offered him some balloons, thinking the bright colors of the balloon would divert the child's attention and at least quieten him for a while. But the child, his eyes were full of tears. He was just sobbing, and all he wanted was his mother and father. The man, still trying to make the child happy, bore him to the gate where the flower seller sat. Now, when he reached to the flower seller, he said that, can you smell those nice flowers, child? Would you like to have a garland? Would you like to put it around your neck? But the child turned his nose away from the basket, and he just started sobbing again and said, I want my mother and I want my father. Thinking to humor his disconsolate charge by a gift of sweets, the man took him to the counter of sweet shop. Now the man took him to the sweet shop. What sweet would you like, child? And he offered him that which sweet would he like to eat. But the child, again, he was just crying and was only saying that I want my mother, I want my father. So students, this is the end of the story. You can see that when he was happy, when he was with his family, all he wanted was to buy everything around. But as soon as he realizes that he is lost and his parents are no more with him, he wanted to get connected with his parents over again, and almost refused everything whatever is offered to him. Now this is the end of the story, students.